Who do you run to when the people whose job it is to protect you become the very people that you need to be protected from? This is the story of 6 innocent Nigerian youths who modern Nigerians would later refer to as the Apo Six. Young Nigerians between the ages of 21 to 25 who were brutally murdered by men of the Nigerian Police Force just because the only girl among them turns down the advances of a senior officer, and the story gets even crazier from here. You see, the 5 boys, Ifeanyi Ozor, Chinedu Meniru, Nwokike, Paulinus Joseph Ogbonna, and Ekene Isaac Mgbe had all gone through the Igbo apprenticeship system, also known as Igba Boy or Imuahia, and after serving their masters, they were all settled and they became their own bosses. They then started life as cast paper traders in Apo Mechanic Village in Abuja, where the 5 of them met and eventually became great friends, the kind of friend that one would refer to as a brother from another mother. 25-year-old Ifeanyi Ozor would later fall in love with 22-year-old Augustina Arebun, who resided in Lagos and was an Esan girl from Edo State, and they were in a long-distance relationship. As with most long-distance relationships, they were probably bombarding themselves with the regular long-distance relationship anthem, "I can't wait to see you," and boy, they couldn't wait. They arranged to meet up, and on the 7th of June 2005, Augustina embarked on a journey from Lagos to Abuja to visit her lover. It would be her first time in the country's capital city, and little did she know that she was embarking on a journey of no return. Ifeanyi and his friends were looking forward to her arrival, and they had plans to give her a nice treat as soon as she arrived. Now, a day before Augustina's arrival, that's on the 6th of June 2005, Honorable Abubakar Abdullahi, a member of Adamawa State House of Assembly, brought a Peugeot 406 car to Ifeanyi's shop for repair. He paid 150,000 naira part payment for the spare parts and other items needed for the repair, and was supposed to pay the 87,000 naira balance after the car had been fixed. So the next day, when Augustina arrived, the 6 of them hopped into the lawmaker's Peugeot 406 at Ifeanyi's self-contained apartment at +10 Gimbia Street, Area 11 in Abuja, and they went to their regular enjoyment spot, a nightclub in Grand Mirage Hotel at Gimbia Street, Area 11, Abuja. And this nightclub was a known spot for the big boys and girls in town, as the boys were doing very well for themselves in the cast peppers business. At the nightclub, while they were having a good time, Augustina was approached by Danjuma Mohammed Ibrahim, the then Deputy Commissioner of Police Abuja, who was off duty, and he made romantic advances to her. Augustina turned him down as she was already in a relationship and had no interest whatsoever in this strange man she had just met in the club. According to reports, Mr. Danjuma didn't take the first no for an answer, and this led to a face-off between the guys and Mr. Danjuma. That bruised his ego, and he angrily stormed out of the club and went ahead to waylay them at a checkpoint at the end of the street. Danjuma informed the subordinate officers on duty at the checkpoint that he had just sighted a group of armed robbers in the area, and they waited at the checkpoint to confront the said quote-unquote armed robbers. After having a good time at the club, the unwary friends hopped in the Peugeot 406 car and started heading back home. As they approached the police checkpoint on Gimbia Street, the police ahead started to flag them down from a distance, and they slowed down as they approached the checkpoint. But as soon as they saw Ibrahim Danjuma, they immediately started speeding up once again. Ibrahim Danjuma got into his BMW and used his car to block the road, and their car collided with Ibrahim Danjuma's car and stopped. Ibrahim Danjuma accused them of being armed robbers, and Ibrahim Danjuma had some argument with the driver Ifeanyi Ozor, who strongly refuted Ibrahim Danjuma's claim of them being armed robbers. Ibrahim Danjuma then took the AK-47 of Inspector Suleiman Audu and shot Ifeanyi Ozor dead on the street. As soon as Ifeanyi Ozor was shot dead, 23-year-old Nwokike, who was in the back seat, was able to quickly send a text message to Ibrahim Meniru, the elder brother of one of the Apo Six victims, Chinedu Meniru, and he quickly informed Edwin that they had a confrontation with the police and that Ifeanyi Ozor, the driver of the car, had been shot dead by the police, and then the phone went dead. That was the last time Edwin heard from Anthony. Ibrahim Danjuma then shot at the remaining 5 who were inside the car. He sprayed them with bullets like it was a borrowed perfume. I can't even put the picture in this video because of YouTube community guidelines, but I'm looking at the pictures right now as I'm recording this, and yo, Chineke na mere mebere. These were the words of their lawyer, Barrister Amobi Nzelu. Limbs and torsos covered in blood, dead eyes stare upward. This is a human being. Look what they did. Anyway, after the shooting, Ifeanyi Ozor, Chinedu Meniru, Paulinus Ogbonna, and Nwokike died on the spot, right inside the Peugeot 406. But Augustina Arebun and Ekene Isaac Mgbe somehow survived with gunshot wounds. And around 2 a.m., the 4 dead bodies and 2 survivors were taken to Garki police station. At the station, at about 3 a.m., the DPO of Garki police station, CSP Uthman Abdulsalam, then called Inspector Ishaya Nyawak, the armorer at Garki police station, and he asked him if they had any locally made pistols in the armory. Ishaya told him yes, that they had recovered some locally made pistols from Ritalori Hotel Garki Abuja about a week earlier, and that the pistols were not registered. Then the DPO Uthman Abdulsalam asked Inspector Ishaya to bring the locally made pistols. Ishaya gave the 2 pistols and 2 live cartridges to the DPO Uthman Abdulsalam. The DPO then brought 2 expended cartridges, daggers, and a cutlass from Lord knows where, and the DPO then planted the 2 pistols, 2 live cartridges, 2 expended cartridges, daggers, and a cutlass inside the Peugeot 406 car to portray the deceased as armed robbers who were killed by the police. The DPO of Garki police station, Uthman Abdulsalam, and the Deputy Commissioner of Police Abuja, Danjuma Ibrahim, then handed the 2 survivors to the ambush squad that was headed by Assistant Superintendent of Police Nicholas Zakaria, and they told the ambush squad that the 2 survivors ought to be quote-unquote escorted, meaning that they should be executed. The ambush squad officers then put Augustina and Ekene in their vehicle and zoomed off. By past 3 that early morning, when Augustina and Ekene had already been taken out to where they would be executed, the DPO of Garki police station, Uthman Abdulsalam, then ordered IPO Dennis Asawa to get a photographer to take photos of the dead bodies alongside the weapons that they had already planted. 32-year-old Chukwudi Chukwu, who is also known as Chu the Best, an Abuja-based photographer who for the last 7 years regularly takes photos of deceased armed robbers who were killed by the police, was called that night to take photos of some of the Apo Six victims present then. Now, Chukwudi, the photographer, happens to know one of the Apo Six boys, and also, some time back, he had a problem with the police over pictures he had taken. So for these reasons, he had the gut feeling to keep the photography negatives of the Apo Six victims for himself, as opposed to handing everything over to the police. So he left after taking photos of the traders who were already dead, and mind you, Augustina and Ekene weren't in the photos he had taken because they were still with the ambush squad who had taken them away to where they would be executed. Now, somehow, Ekene managed to escape. Of course, the dead don't tell tales, so we'll never get to know how he managed to get off that vehicle. But he somehow got away, and he was still bleeding at that point because he was shot during the car shooting. But despite the gunshot wound, Ekene Isaac Mgbe continued to attempt to take himself as far away as possible from the reach of these police officers whom he knew would be looking for him. He kept on going until he got to Prince and Princess Estate, where his strength eventually failed him and he laid in the bush. When the ambush squad discovered that Ekene had escaped, they returned with Augustina to inform Ibrahim Danjuma that the male survivor had escaped, and Ibrahim Danjuma was extremely furious. In the heat of the moment, Danjuma Ibrahim went to Augustina, who was still alive in the vehicle, and he held her head, turned it, and strangled her. But despite the strangling, Augustina still had life in her. Even while committing a crime, our police are still incompetent. Anyway, Danjuma Ibrahim then ordered the officers to go in search of Ekene, and the officers were ordered to kill the escapee on sight. By 6:30 a.m., the officers had yet to find Ekene. Uthman Abdulsalam and Ibrahim Danjuma knew that they needed to clean up their mess as soon as possible because people were starting to wake up as it was already morning. They wanted to finish their dirty work, portray the deceased as armed robbers, do the necessary paperwork, then quickly bury them and then close the case. So the photographer Chukwudi Chukwu was called again by just a few minutes before 6 a.m. that morning to take photos again of the victims, this time around Augustina included, and the officers thought Augustina was already dead at this point, but she was still alive. The photographer Chukwudi came again, and bear in mind The photographer and some high-ranking officers at the station were initially lied to that these guys were thieves who were killed in a gun battle. So Chukwudi was instructed by the police to take photos of all the bodies together alongside the weapons. But on his own, Chukwudi decided to also take individual photos of the bodies. Now, when Chukwudi got to Augustina, to his utmost surprise, Augustina spoke up and she was begging him for water. He was surprised as he thought they were all dead, and Chukwudi told the IPO Dennis Asawa that the girl was still alive and wanted water. Dennis Asawa then told the DPO Uthman Abdusalam that the girl was still alive. The officers then took Augustina to the police container and told the photographer to go and wait at the gate and that he would be called in later. The police spent some time in the container, and by the time Augustina was brought out of the police container, she was finally dead, and Chukwudi was now called back in to take the photos. According to Chukwudi, he saw a long nail in her nose and blood was gushing out of her nose. My father doesn't own YouTube, so I have to obey their rules. I can't put this picture of a corpse bleeding through the nose in this video. If I do that, YouTube will suppress this video. They won't recommend it to people, and they will also demonetize it, and there's a good chance that they will take it down. So the disadvantages outweigh the advantages, so bear with me. Anyway, back to the story. At this point, 5 of the 6 victims were dead. Ekene was the only one still alive and he was still on the run. That's why if you look closely at the Apo 6 pictures, you would see that there are only 5 bodies on the floor. That's because Ekene was still on the run at that time. At the time Chukwudi took those pictures. By 7 a.m., a resident of Prince and Princess Estate named Godwin Eze, who is popularly called Goddy, found Ekene in the estate with gunshot wounds lying in the bush. Ekene told Goddy, that's the guy that found him in the bush, that the police killed his brothers unprovoked, and Ekene asked Goddy to take him to the police headquarters as soon as possible, because if the police patrols him from Gaki or Durumi police station should find him here, they would kill him too. In order not to get himself into trouble with the police by carrying Ekene himself, Goddy then handed Ekene over to Hassan Wajiga, a private mobile police with force number 214506, attached to squadron number 45 of the police mobile force. Again, no photo of him, but stay with me. Ekene told the Mopo, that's Hassan Wajiga, what just happened to his friends, and he begged Hassan to take him to the police headquarters, Louis Edet's house, because he felt that place would be safe as there would be other well-meaning and superior officers there that wouldn't put up with the crime that these other officers are committing. And besides, if he is taken directly to a hospital, the hospital will still require a police report before any treatment because of the gunshot wounds. So, by that early hour of the day, there was no cab or commercial motorbike available in the estate that could take them from the estate to the police headquarters. So Hassan decided to carry Ekene and walk to a place where they would easily find a cab or motorbike that would take them to the police headquarters. But on the way, they were accosted by a police patrol team using an Algon Prado jeep. The officers demanded that Ekene be handed over to them. Hassan Wajiga said, and I quote, "This was between 7 and 8 a.m. on Wednesday, 8 June 2005. And when I told them the victim wanted me to take him to the force headquarters, they said I should just leave him with them. But as I turned to go, I heard a gunshot. When I turned back to see what was happening, I saw the victim lying down. I heard another shot, then they threw his dead body into their vehicle and drove away." These men, these police officers, shot this innocent guy twice on the street of Abuja on a Wednesday morning, unprovoked. I want you to remember that the next time they try to use celebrities to tell you that police is your friend. The officers involved in this crime are high-ranking police officers, not the ones in traffic who are barely hanging on. Ibrahim Danjuma was the DCP of Abuja at the time, DCP operations. Uthman Abdusalam was the DPO of Gaki police station, and by rank he was a CSP, Chief Superintendent of Police. So these were high-ranking officers behind these killings. Anyway, back to the story. At this point, 6 of them had been killed. Now, 5 of the 6 victims were Igbos. All the guys killed were from the Igbo tribe, and the officer who orchestrated the execution is a Hausa man. So this case had a tribal angle to it. I want you to keep that in mind because it will be important as we progress into the story. After the 6 of them had died, Constable Dennis Asawa and some other police officers then took the 6 bodies to Asokoro District Hospital at around 8:24 am that Wednesday, June 8, 2005. The bodies were taken to the hospital because the police wanted to certify them dead that morning and then finally bury their bodies. So Constable Dennis Asawa met this doctor here, Dr. Ignatius Ella Mogaba, and Constable Dennis Asawa told Dr. Ignatius that these were armed robbers who were killed by the police. And right there at the hospital, one of the 6 victims had his brain out. Like, you could literally see his brain matter. Oh, chim. Normally, an autopsy was supposed to be conducted, but the police didn't allow the doctor to follow due process. After they were certified dead, the police took the corpses and then handed the corpses over to the Abuja Environmental Protection Board, AEPB, and they were to dispose of the bodies. Now, normally, the Nigerian police officers involved would easily get away with things like this. They would just tell the press or anyone that inquires that the victims were armed robbers who were killed by the police, and people would be left with no choice but to accept the report of the police, and the case would end just like that. But this time around, for this particular case, the police had 2 major problems. One is that those guys were Igbo guys who were living very far away from home. They were in the northern region of Nigeria, so the Igbo traders in Abuja back then had a very strong sense of community. You get? They looked out for themselves. And the second problem was the message that Anthony sent before he died. After that text, Ibrahim Meniru informed other traders in Apo Mechanic Village of what had just happened, and they went into action very early in the morning of June 8, 2005. They were very vigilant that morning. Some went to different police stations, some went to cemeteries, and they just spread themselves out that morning. Celestine Nwokike and Aloysius Chukwu, 2 family members of Paulinus Joseph Ogbonna, went to the police station to make inquiries about Paulinus' whereabouts, and they were detained in the police station. I had to pay 6,500 naira, about $49 at the time, before they were released. So that morning, when the Abuja Environmental Protection Board staff brought a truck carrying 6 corpses to the cemetery in Apo, the traders who were already on the lookout instantly became suspicious. They were told that these were corpses of armed robbers who died in a gun battle with the police. But that answer wasn't satisfactory to the traders who already got word of what happened last night. And a young man among them forcefully pulled back the clothes covering the bodies, and he instantly recognized Ifeanyi Ozor. Ibrahim Meniru arrived shortly at the scene and was able to identify his brother's corpse with bullet wounds in the right thigh and stomach. And in no time, word started to spread and more people started showing up. The angry crowd immediately seized the truck with the dead bodies inside and moved it to Apo police station, demanding answers for the unjust murders of their colleagues who they were certain weren't armed robbers. And in no time, more people joined the crowd, and the crowd continued to grow even bigger, with more people demanding answers for the unjust killing of the traders. In an attempt to disperse the crowd, the police fired shots at the crowd, killing 2 people and leaving many wounded. The traders abandoned the dead bodies and fled for their lives. The police then reclaimed the bodies, and with the assistance of some Abuja Environmental Protection Board staff, they went on to bury them in 2 unmarked shallow graves in Utako district. The bodies of Ifeanyi Ozor, Paulinus Ogbonna, Anthony Nwokike, and Augustina Arebun were stacked and buried in one grave, while Chinedu Meniru and Ekene Isaac Mgbe were buried in the second shallow grave. This changed the tempo of things, and the peaceful demonstration by the traders and residents of Apo turned into a serious riot that led to the destruction of properties and a serious clash between the police and the traders and also residents of Apo. The angry mob burnt down Apo police station. Police vehicles and other properties belonging to the police were set on fire. The officers on duty were chased away, and the people detained at the police station were released. Apo Market was shut down as the riot lasted for several days. A reinforced anti-riot police team was able to quell the riot, but the case was no longer one of those cases the police could easily sweep under the carpet, as it had garnered so much attention and pressure from the public, so much that it caught the attention of the then president of Nigeria, Olusegun Obasanjo, and also the acting inspector general of police at the time, Sunday Gabriel Ehinderu. The officers involved were still claiming that the deceased were armed robbers who were killed in the gun battle with the police, And at that point, that story was a hard sell to Nigerians who are in the know of the police's long history of brutality, false accusations, and extrajudicial killings. There was a national outcry. This was finally that one police extrajudicial killing case that had finally gotten enough attention and momentum, so everyone was lending their voice and making their frustration known. Nigerians, especially the Igbos, were really angry and wanted justice for the victims. Ohaneze Ndi Igbo, an Igbo socio-cultural organization, hired Prince Orji Nwafor Orizu as their lead legal counsel to ensure that the truth comes to light and the officers involved face the wrath of the law. Out of fear for the police, many lawyers ran away and refused to represent the families of the Apo Six. But Barrister Amobi Nzelu and Dr. Mrs. Ifeanyi Ozor, popularly known as Ada Igbo Buruburu, volunteered to be the legal counsel of the families of the victims. Barrister Amobi Nzelu said he had written his will already and was ready to lay down his life for this case and ensure that the truth comes to light and the victims get justice. On the 13th of June 2005, the acting Inspector General of Police at the time, Sunday Gabriel Ehinderu, set up a 6-man administrative panel of inquiry headed by the then Deputy Inspector General of Police, Mr. Mike Okiro, and the panel was to investigate the case. That is, the police were investigating themselves, you get. It was a police panel that was set up by the IG of police to investigate the case. Now, there was a police officer named Anthony Ida. He was a member of the police patrol team codenamed Alpha Service. Anthony knew too much. He was at the checkpoint during the shooting and he witnessed the first 4 of the Apo Six get murdered on the street. Anthony wasn't happy with the entire ordeal and wanted to implicate his boss who committed the crime. Anthony told his brother Ogbonna Ifeanyi Ida about his plans and he kept his brother updated on his every move. The police officer Anthony was an Igbo man, so he met with Mr. Austin Ifedineze, the then deputy chairman of Ohaneze Ndi Igbo Federal Capital Territory chapter. Anthony told Mr. Austin about how and why 4 of the 6 victims were murdered. He said that his boss Ibrahim Danjuma had made passes at Augustina at Grand Mirage Hotel, Area 11, Abuja, where they met shortly before the incident at Gimbia Street. Anthony said that Ifeanyi Ozor, who was the late Augustina's boyfriend, resisted Danjuma's move and told his lady friend not to accede to the DCP's advances. Anthony said that when Danjuma used his car to stop the Apo Six at Gimbia Street, before the victims were shot, he had Ifeanyi telling Ibrahim Danjuma whether it was right to label them armed robbers because his girlfriend refused his love advances. Anthony said that the DCP, Ibrahim Danjuma, then gave the order for the victims to be shot at, and when Suleiman Audu refused to do the shooting, Ibrahim Danjuma took his AK-47 and went on to shoot them himself. Anthony told Mr. Austin Ifedineze that he eavesdropped on DCP Ibrahim Danjuma's conversation with his boss, the Abuja Commissioner of Police, Mr. Emmanuel Adebayo. Anthony said DCP Ibrahim Danjuma told CP Emmanuel Adebayo that they had a bad case at hand, and CP Emmanuel Adebayo told him to go and handle it with maturity. In his conversation with Mr. Austin Ifedineze, Anthony asked for forgiveness from Ohaneze and all Nigerians over the tragic incident. Anthony promised Mr. Austin Ifedineze that he was going to appear before the Mike Okiro panel and he would tell the whole truth there without holding back. The Deputy Commissioner of Police Abuja, Ibrahim Danjuma, the DPO Uthman Abdusalam and ASP Nicholas Zakaria were already on to Anthony Ida. Anthony witnessed the crime firsthand and they had a strong conviction that he was working against them to bring the truth to light. On Saturday, 18th of June 2005, the police officer Anthony Ida met with the Apo Six photographer Chukwudi Chukwu, who is also an Igbo man. They discussed and they were both willing to play their parts in making sure that the truth comes to light. Anthony Ida was scheduled to appear before the Mike Okiro panel on Monday, 20th of June 2005. But that same Saturday that he met the photographer, that's on the 18th of June 2005. After work that day, Anthony was invited for a drink by the Gaki Divisional Police Officer Uthman Abdusalam and ambush squad leader ASP Nicholas Zakaria. And during the drinking session, Anthony's Coca-Cola drink was poisoned. When Anthony came back that night, he told his brother Ifeanyi that he had drinks with the DPO of Garki police station, Uthman Abdulsalam, and the ambush squad leader, Nicholas Zakaria. By morning the next day, Sunday 19th of June 2005, Anthony fell sick and died in church. The police immediately took his body and deposited it in a mortuary. The next day, Monday 20th of June 2005, the Mike Okiro police panel kicked off and they were not aware that one of the witnesses was already dead. Dr. Ignatius Ella Mogaba, the doctor who certified the Apo Six dead, appeared before the police panel that day, and he told the panel that there was no post-mortem on the corpses and that the policemen who brought them to the hospital refused to bring down the corpses for him to follow the normal procedure before certifying them dead. By the way, post-mortem means autopsy, it's the same thing. So, the doctor testified that by 8:24 a.m. on the 8th of June 2005, the police arrived at Asokoro District Hospital in a police van, and they came with 6 corpses that were riddled with bullets, and one of them had his brain matter exposed. And it was told by the police that they were armed robbers that engaged in a shooting battle with the police and lost their lives. The doctor continued, "The normal procedure is to report to the management, which is what I did. Under normal circumstances, they should have been sent to the mortuary, and I actually requested them to be taken to the mortuary. To the best of my knowledge, there was no post-mortem." The doctor also confirmed that the officer that he dealt with directly at the hospital was Dennis Asawa. The panel meeting continued, still unaware that one of the police witnesses was dead. And when Barrister Amobi Nzelu was cross-examining ASP Nicholas Zakaria, ASP Zakaria shocked the audience when he told Barrister Amobi, "Private Anthony has died. I don't know what killed him." The Deputy Inspector General of Police, Mike Okiro, who was heading the panel, was in complete shock when he heard it. He instantly reacted, "You mean that Anthony is dead?" At this point, no one knew the details surrounding his death, but Nigerians immediately started suspecting foul play in his mysterious death, and the lawyer of the families of the victims, Barrister Amobi Nzelu, was very vocal about his suspicion. Barrister Amobi Nzelu, right there at the Mike Okiro panel, accused Nicholas Zakaria of having a hand in the death of Officer Anthony, and ASP Nicholas Zakaria defended himself and told Barrister Amobi Nzelu, "You are defaming my character." Barrister Amobi continued, "Material evidences are being suppressed. We are seeking for the Inspector General of Police to order the Abuja Commissioner of Police, the Divisional Police Officer, and all the concerned men and officers to proceed on interdiction. For as long as they are on seat, progress and justice would never be done. Anthony was allegedly killed because they feel he was our informant. I have written my will. I am not afraid. But I want to warn this panel that many more people would die if the concerned officers are not sent on leave or at least transferred." Barrister Amobi then asked the Mike Okiro panel to provide adequate security for another key police witness, Hassan Wajiga, who was to testify soon, as he witnessed the death of the trader who had died last. At the end of the panel sitting for that day, DIG Mike Okiro promised that adequate security would be provided for Hassan Gaba Wajiga and other key witnesses, and he promised to discuss the issue of the police officer's transfer or interdiction with his boss, the Acting Inspector General of Police, Sunday Gabriel Ehindero. He promised that by the end of the week, all the mysteries about the killings would be unraveled. On Wednesday, 22nd of June 2005, the Mike Okiro panel proceeding was yet another drama-filled day. At 11:25 a.m., 15 minutes before the commencement of the panel proceedings, Senator Uche Chukwumereji was present that day to witness the panel proceedings. Family members of the deceased, members of the press, and other concerned Nigerians were also present that day. Barrister Amobi Nzelu, the family lawyer, jokingly refused to sit on the cushion chair that he was given by the police during the panel session, due to fear of the possibility of a bomb or any other explosive being planted in the chair to harm him. He requested a plastic chair and he was given one, which he used throughout that day. That day, Constable Hassan Wajiga testified before the panel. He narrated how Ekene was brought to him by Godwin Eze at Prince and Princess Estate, how police patrol team took Ekene away from him while they were on their way to get a car or bike that would take them to the police headquarters, and how Ekene was killed on the streets by the officers in daylight, and how his dead body was thrown into their Argon Prado jeep, after which they zoomed off. Innocent Okereke, a truck pusher who was also on the streets when Ekene was killed, also testified before the panel, and he corroborated Hassan Wajiga's testimony. Innocent told the panel that he saw the policemen in the Argon jeep and had 2 gunshots at about 7 in the morning. Basi Enobong, a security supervisor at the estate, also testified before the panel that day and corroborated the testimonies of those who had earlier testified about how Ekene was murdered. Godwin Eze, who found Ekene in the bush in Prince and Princess Estate, also testified before the panel and narrated how he found Ekene wounded in the bush and handed him over to Hassan Wajiga. According to Godi, when he found Ekene in the bush, he asked Ekene what's going on in Hausa, and Ekene told him that he didn't understand Hausa. Ekene then told him, "Please take me to the force headquarters or police command, because if the police on patrol finds me here, they will kill me. They have already killed 2 of my brothers." At the end of the panel session for the day, as promised earlier, security was provided for Hassan Wajiga, the Mopo who testified to witnessing the death of the last victim. Right after Hassan's testimony, he was taken away by the commander of Mopo 45, CSP Solomon Oyewole. The Okiro panel then went on to examine Prince and Princess Estate and inspected the area where the last victim was shot. The next day, Thursday, June 23, 2005, the Senior Special Assistant to the President on Media, Mrs. Oluremi Oyo, addressed the press and she disclosed the President's stance on the Apo Six incident. She told reporters, "I want to say categorically that the President knew about the matter. As a matter of fact, he orders the Inspector General of Police and the rest to ensure that this investigation be carried out. President Obasanjo would not want to speculate on the alleged killings until the report is submitted to him at the end of the panel's sitting, and so the President waits until when it is true. It will be most unstatesmanly and certainly unpresidential to speculate over an investigation that has not ended." That Thursday, people gathered and waited for hours for the panel to sit, but after waiting for a long time, by 1 p.m., Barrister Amobin Zelu addressed the crowd. These were his exact words that day. He just told them that the panel would not sit that day. That same Thursday, Senator Uche Chukwumereji, who was present at the last panel proceeding on Wednesday, also spoke at a press conference in Abuja. These were his exact words. You can pause the video to read it if you have the time. But in summary, the senator called for a judicial commission to take over the ongoing investigation. He said that a judicial panel will be more judicially empowered than a police panel, that witnesses will be able to testify without fear to a judicial panel than testifying before an all-uniformed police panel, and that despite the high integrity of the police panelists, members of the public will not completely trust the police panel investigation since it is a panel that is investigating itself. Friday, June 24, 2005 was one hell of a day for this case, as a lot of things happened on that day. Before that Friday, the top police officers who were investigating this case, the members of the press, and other Nigerians who were not in Apo village had not seen the corpses of the Apo Six victims. It was just the police officers involved and the members of the Apo community who had recovered the bodies from the cemetery who had seen the bodies. I mean, this was 2005, not like the present day when everyone has a proper phone with a camera and would just easily record the bodies and share them on Instagram Live. So the protesters did not take photos of the corpses. They just angrily took them to the police station, and as you already know, the police seized the bodies and buried them. Now, Ibrahim Danjuma appeared before the Mike Okiro panel, and the only truth that came out of his mouth was his name. Danjuma lied that they forgot to take photos of the victims before burying them, and in his mind, he thought that was going to be the end of it. But what Ibrahim Danjuma did not know was that the photographer Chukwudi hid some of the photo negatives and kept them for himself. If you remember, earlier on I told you why he did that. He felt that something would come up later on because of how the whole ordeal went down, and he also knew one of the victims. The case took a completely different turn, and Nigerians got even angrier when the photographer Chukwudi Chukwu appeared before the Mike Okiro panel. The implicated police officers were shocked to see Chukwudi Chukwu appearing before the panel, because before then, some of those officers had approached him. The DPO Uthman Abdulsalam had seriously threatened him not to testify before the panel even if he was invited, and the DPO also bribed him with 10,000 naira. Two-factor authentication, threat and bribe. So that Friday, Barrister Amobi Nzelu called on Chukwudi Chukwu to testify before the panel, and Chukwudi narrated how he was called twice to take photos of the corpses of 5 of the 6 victims. With the negatives, Chukwudi was able to print out the pictures of the victims right after they were killed, and he presented them to the police panel. Chukwudi told the panel that Ibrahim Danjuma had repeatedly pressurized him not to inform the press or the police that he took photos of the victims. He also pressurized him not to leak the pictures to the media or to the police, and that the negatives were taken from him, but he still managed to keep some. He said, "Suleiman had collected all the negatives without knowing that I was still keeping some, as if I knew this thing would crop up." Chukwudi also told the panel how the police planted weapons beside the deceased victims in his presence. He said, "The police had to arrange some guns and cartridges beside the corpses as evidence, asking me several times to hold on as they bring one thing beside them." Chukwudi also told the panel how the late police officer Anthony Ida met with him 2 days before his death to express his reservations about the Apo Six victims. Chukwudi told the panel that he was surprised when Suleiman came to him 2 days later to instruct him to go and take a picture in the mortuary, only for him to be confronted with Anthony's corpse when he got to the mortuary to take the pictures. He said, and I quote, "I was surprised when I was called to come and take some pictures, only for me to discover that it was that of Anthony Ida. I was with him on Saturday and there was nothing wrong with him." Chukwudi said that the remains of the victims were bundled into a police van with no number in his presence, and they said they were taking their bodies to the mortuary. As Chukwudi testified, Augustina's mother, Mrs. Monica Arebun, broke down in tears. The image of the Apo Six victims that was released by Chukwudi sent shockwaves across the country and to the international community and human rights groups who were already invested in the case. In fact, Philip Alston, United Nations Special Rapporteur on extrajudicial, summary or arbitrary executions, made a fact-finding visit to Nigeria due to the Apo Six Killings. The Nigerian Police Force was in a bad light, and in order to save the image of the force, due to the shocking revelations coming out from the police panel, the Acting Inspector General of Police, Mr. Sunday Ehinderu, barred the press from further covering the panel sitting that Friday. That Friday, just as Mr. Mike Okiro had promised, the panel had enough evidence to show that these officers involved were indeed guilty of murder. The stand of the Nigerian Police Force on the case was clear at that point. They were no longer buying the story that the Apo Six victims were armed robbers. That Friday, the Acting Inspector General of Police, Sunday Gabriel Ehinderu, announced the interdiction of Uthman Abdulsalam, Nicholas Zakaria, and Suleiman Audu, and the Inspector General of Police also ordered that they be arrested, and they were arrested. Ibrahim Danjuma was also arrested later on. After his testimony, Chukwudi spoke to the press, and he said he has since been getting phone calls and death threats from unknown people, but that he is satisfied with the fact that he had cleared his conscience. That same Friday, June 24, 2005, the President Olusegun Obasanjo, who was represented by the Attorney General of the Federation and Minister of Justice, Chief Akinlolu Olujimi, disbanded the police panel of inquiry and ordered that they stop sitting. The Minister of Justice said that the government was seriously disturbed about the situation. He said that although the federal government appreciated the efforts of the now disbanded police panel, the situation appeared too grave and weighty to be left to the police to handle. Chief Akinlolu Olujimi said, and I quote, "The allegations point accusing fingers at the police. It therefore does not rhyme with transparency and the rule of law to allow the police to be a judge in their own case, particularly having regards to public outcry and reactions following the incident." The President, via the Minister of Justice, then announced that the now disbanded police panel of inquiry will be replaced with a 7-man Judicial Commission of Inquiry. Chief Akinlolu Olujimi, the then Attorney General of the Federation and Minister of Justice, then named Justice Olasumbo Goodluck as Chairman of the Judicial Commission of Inquiry in the killings. Barrister Isaac J. Idu was named as the Secretary of the Commission, and Barrister Uluwole Aina was named as counsel to the panel. Other members of the Judicial Panel of Inquiry include Chief Osita Okeke, Hawa Ibrahim, Pari Osanyede, a retired Deputy Inspector General of Police, and Brigadier General J.A. Okumbo. The Judicial Commission of Inquiry was sworn in on the 27th of June 2005, and they were given 6 weeks to sit. These were the objectives given to the Judicial Commission of Inquiry by the federal government. So, after the president had disbanded the police panel on Friday and handed the case over to a Judicial Panel of Inquiry, on Monday 27th of June 2005, the same day the panel of inquiry was sworn in, the DPO of Garki Police Division, CSP Uthman Abdulsalam, you remember him, right? He was one of the officers who was arrested due to the revelations from the police panel. So, he was detained on the 6th floor at the police headquarters Louis Edet House. That Monday, at around 1 p.m, Uthman told CSP Lawan Ado that he wanted to go and pray at the mosque downstairs within the police headquarters. And guess what? Uthman Abdulsalam was never seen again after then. He has been on the run ever since he left to go and quote-unquote pray. CSP Lawan Ado was immediately accused of aiding Uthman Abdulsalam to escape, and he was arrested immediately. A similar case had happened 3 years ago. I made a video about it. 2 Igbo teenagers, 16-year-old Fabian Nnemeka Ugoke and 17-year-old Izuchukwu Ayogu, were murdered by a Hausa policeman named Gambo Saki, and the policeman, Gambo Saki, quote-unquote, escaped from prison. The case was dropped, and all other officers who were arrested earlier on were released. So, well-meaning Nigerians were starting to suspect that the police wanted to pull the same trick once again. The Southeast Caucus of the House of Representatives were furious with the news of Uthman's escape. They described his escape as a huge joke, and they demanded that the other 9 suspects be handed over to the State Security Service. The Southeast Caucus of the House of Representatives asked the Acting Inspector General of Police, Mr. Sunday Ehinderu, and the Police Commissioner in charge of the Federal Capital Territory, Mr. Emmanuel Adebayo, to resign over the escape from custody of the Garki Divisional Police Officer, CSP Abdulsalam Uthman. The Southeast Caucus of the House of Representatives frowned at the mysterious death of the police officer Anthony Ida, and they commended the federal government for disbanding the Mike Okiro panel of inquiry. The judicial panel immediately went to work, and the panel had its first sitting on the 29th of June 2005 at the customary Court of Appeal, Jabi, Abuja. Just as the Judicial Panel of Inquiry kicked off their inquiry, on the 1st of July 2005, as a result of the revelations made during the disbanded police panel, the Inspector General of Police himself went on to charge 6 officers involved in court for murder. The 6 officers that were charged for the murder of the Apo Six were the Deputy Commissioner of Police Abuja Command, Ibrahim Danjuma, Divisional Police Officer of the Garki Police Station, Mr. Uthman Abdulsalam, who was still at large, Leader of Ambush Squad Alpha Series, Mr. Nicholas Zakaria, ASP, Sadiq Salami, and Police Corporals, Mr. Izike Echeneje and Baba Emmanuel. As you can see, things were not looking good for these officers at all. Their boss had just charged them in court for murder, and the president had just set up a judicial panel of inquiry that comprised prominent individuals who cannot be bullied, paid off, or compromised. So at this point, the officers involved were beginning to understand that the matter was very serious and wouldn't be one that they would get away with, at least not easily. And some of these officers involved were ready to throw Ibrahim Danjuma under the bus. Here are some things that happened during the panel's inquiry. Inspector Suleiman Audu had a change of testimony at the Judicial Panel of Inquiry and decided to call out Ibrahim Danjuma. He started his testimony with, "I will confess," and he graphically narrated how the killings took place. Inspector Suleiman Audu said that Ibrahim Danjuma snatched his AK-47 rifle and shot at the Peugeot 406 10 times. The panel also visited the scene, and the sad incident was reenacted. On the 5th of July 2005, Police Constable Yakubu Philibos, who was on duty at the pin-down stop and search point at Gimbia Street on the night of the shooting, testified. He said that on the night of the shooting, he was on duty alongside Inspector Suleiman Audu and 2 other constables, and Danjuma Ibrahim met them at the checkpoint. He said that while Ibrahim Danjuma was there with them, the Peugeot 406 approached their duty point at full speed and refused to stop until Danjuma blocked it with his BMW car. Constable Yakubu said that after Danjuma stopped the Peugeot with his car, Danjuma Ibrahim ordered Suleiman Audu to fire the men, but Suleiman Audu refused. Then Danjuma took the rifle from Audu and fired into the Peugeot 406, after which he directed the patrol team to convey the shot victims to the station. Constable Yakubu said that the victims were not armed and he never saw any locally made pistol or cartridge in the Peugeot 406. The armorer at the Gaki police station, Inspector Ishaya, also appeared before the Judicial Commission of Inquiry on that day. He narrated how locally made pistols, which were recovered by the police from Rita Lori Hotel a week before the incident, were planted in the Peugeot 406 to portray the victims as armed robbers. Police Constable Haruna Mamot from Gaki police station also testified that day. He said that about 5:50 a.m. when he reported for duty at the station, he saw 5 corpses comprising 4 males and 1 female at the gate of the Gaki station. Haruna said that he saw the armorer Inspector Ishaya Yawak give 2 live cartridges and 2 locally made pistols to Dennis Asawa, and he also saw the DPO Uthman Abdusalam give 2 knives and 1 cutlass to Dennis Asawa, and he saw the weapons being planted beside the corpses. Police Constable Haruna said that the IPO Dennis Asawa called the photographer to come take pictures of the corpses, and after the photographer was done taking the pictures, the 2 live cartridges and 2 locally made pistols were given back to the armorer, Inspector Ishaya Nyawak, while the 2 knives and 1 cutlass were given back to the DPO Uthman Abdusalam. On the 7th of July 2005, the Police High Command tendered a formal apology to Nigerians for the killings of the 6. Also, on the 7th of July 2005, the photographer who was called to take photos of the deceased, 32-year-old Mr. Chukwu Dichukwu, had spectators in tears when he testified before the panel. Mr. Chukwu Dichukwu, who at the time was well known as True the Best, was said to have worked with the police for 7 years. According to him, he was called twice to take photos of the scene. The first call was by 3:30 a.m. and when he got there, he saw the Deputy Commissioner of Police Danjuma Ibrahim, the Divisional Police Officer Abdusalam Uthman, and 2 other policemen alongside the bodies, and the second call was by 6 a.m. This time around, there was an additional body and weapons alongside the bodies. He shocked everyone when he disclosed how Augustina was killed. He said, "When I wanted to take the pictures of the corpses, the lady was crying, 'Water, water.' Then I called the IPO Dennis Asawa that she wanted to take water. It was then they knew she had not died. So it was like he went and told the DPO Abdusalam Uthman. They then took the girl to the police container. They said I should wait at the gate and should not take the picture until she died. The girl took a long time to die. I saw a long nail in her nose. When I wanted to take her picture, blood was rushing from that place." Now, the photographer went on to say that when the police launched the panel of inquiry, he was instructed by the Divisional Crime Officer at the Gaki station, Victor Pam, to go and see the DPO, that's Uthman Abdusalam. And the photographer said, "When I went to see the DPO, he said he heard that I would be invited to the Okiro panel, but I said I wouldn't be having anything to do with it. Then he threatened me not to appear before the panel, even if I was invited. Then he gave me 10,000 naira, which I still have in my drawer now." In accordance with the terms of reference given to the Judicial Commission of Inquiry, on Monday, July 11, 2005, the families of the Apo Six victims appeared before the Judicial Commission of Inquiry, and through the photograph of their dead bodies, the families identified the deceased. 5 of the 6 victims were identified through the photos Chukwudi took before they were buried by the police, so the 3rd term of reference given to the commission was accomplished that day. Mr. Raphael Elvis Ozor, the younger brother of Ifeanyi Ozor, testified that Monday, and he identified the owner of the Peugeot 406 that the Apo Six drove that night, which the police claims that they stole. These were his exact words to the Judicial Commission of Inquiry on that day. You can pause the video to read them if you have the time. Elvis presented photocopies of the receipts and the agreement with the senator that owns the Peugeot 406 before the panel. He demanded that the federal government sponsor the burial of the 6 victims, and he demanded federal government presence during their burial. Augustina's mom, Mrs. Monica Arebun, also appeared before the Judicial Commission of Inquiry that Friday. She said that her 22-year-old daughter had finished secondary school and was awaiting her results just before life was snuffed out of her. She said she had earlier lost her husband and that she was finding it difficult to cope with the children's school fees. She told the commission, "All I ask of government is that justice should prevail. The killers of my daughter should not be allowed to go scot-free." On that same Monday, 11th of July 2005, Celestine Nwokike and Aloysius Chukwu, two relatives of Paulinus Joseph Ogbonna, also testified. They told the panel that on the 8th of June 2005, after Paulinus' disappearance, they went to the police station to make inquiries about Paulinus' whereabouts. They said that when they got to the police station, they met an officer named Mr. Al-Hassan, and Al-Hassan asked them to write a statement on their complaint. They said that as soon as they were done writing and handed their statement over to Al-Hassan, Al-Hassan told them, "Welcome, you are now under arrest." Celestine Nwokike said that Al-Hassan asked them to pay 5,000 naira bail and threatened to lock them up with hardened criminals if they didn't pay up as soon as possible. Celestine Nwokike said that they pleaded with Al-Hassan that they had no money on them, and they asked him to allow them to meet a relative who was waiting at the gate so they could get bail from him. Al-Hassan then assigned another officer to escort them to go collect the bail from the man who was waiting for them outside. So they left with the officer and met one Mr. Lawrence Chukwuali. Mr. Lawrence gave them 2,500 naira and they went back to Al-Hassan with the 2,500 naira, pleading with him that it was all they could get. They begged Al-Hassan that they would come back later to pay the remaining 2,500 naira if they were set free, and Al-Hassan seized their handset and told them that whenever they paid the remaining 2,500 naira bill, then they would get back their handset. When they returned the next day with the remaining 2,500 naira, Al-Hassan told them that the 5,000 naira was for his boss, and he asked them to pay an additional 1,000 naira that would be for himself. So in total, they paid 6,500 naira, about $49 at the time, before they were given back their phones and set free. That Monday, Barrister Amobi Nzelu sought the Commission's assistance in getting all the police personnel involved in the killing of the traders to come and show where they kept the victims' corpses. On the 13th of July 2005, the chairman of Apo Traders Association, Mr. Motimo Patrick Ihejirika, first mounted the witness box that day, and he testified to the integrity and innocence of the 5 traders. The chairman narrated how the bodies were intercepted by the crowd at the Apo cemetery after they got word of what happened that night. Mr. Motimo Patrick Ihejirika also told the panel that Apo police station and police vehicles were burnt down by the police to cover up the killing of 2 persons shot during a peaceful demonstration at the station by the traders, and he blamed the police for causing the riots due to the way they handled the peaceful demonstration. Mr. Patrick Ihejirika said that as chairman of the association, he donated 50,000 naira for the building of the Apo village police station, and the maintenance of the station has since been carried out by members of the association, so it makes no sense that they would now be the ones to burn down the station. Mr. Patrick said that the police from Gaki division joined the Apo police, and with CSP Usman Abdulsalam at the forefront, they shot at the protesters and killed 2 people, and some other protesters were wounded. These were some of his exact words on that day that I was able to gather. If you have the time, you can pause the video and read. That same day, 13th of July 2005, Mr. Ogbonna Ifeanyi Ida, the brother of Anthony Ida, the police officer who died, testified before the commission. Ifeanyi said that when his brother Anthony returned from work on the 18th of June 2005, his brother told him that he had drinks with the DPO Uthman Abdulsalam and ASP Nicholas Zakaria just before they closed for the day. The next morning, his brother Anthony fell sick and died. Mr. Ogbonna Ifeanyi Ida also demanded protection for his life as he alleged that the police had been harassing and threatening him. In line with the objectives given to the Judicial Commission of Inquiry by the federal government, that same Thursday, 14th of July 2005, Justice Olasumbo orders that the bodies of the 6 victims be exhumed to enable an in-depth autopsy to be conducted on them at the National Hospital Abuja. Justice Olasumbo Goodluck told the Chief Medical Director of the National Hospital Abuja to direct the Chief Pathological Officer to conduct the test, and that the results should be presented to the Commission with identification of the deceased, as well as any aspect that could assist the Commission on its assignment. On Friday, July 15, 2005, the Deputy Chairman of Ohaneze Ndigbo Federal Capital Territory Chapter, Mr. Austin Ifedineze, appeared before the Judicial Commission of Inquiry, and he told the panelists his last conversation with Anthony Ida, the police officer who was poisoned. I already talked about their discussion earlier in the video. On the 18th of July 2005, the Commission of Inquiry ordered an autopsy and forensic examination on the body of the late Anthony Ida, the deceased police officer. That Monday, July 18, 2005, Ibrahim Danjuma appeared before the Judicial Commission of Inquiry for the first time. He was led in evidence by his counsel, Barrister John Olusegun Odubela, and believe it or not, that man's testimony lasted for about 8 hours. Just like his earlier testimony before the police panel, once again, truth was a foreign language to Ibrahim Danjuma. Ibrahim Danjuma said that on the day of the incident, June 7th, he was summoned to the presidential villa as part of his duty supervising patrol teams in the FCT. But on his way to the presidential villa, he got a call from the Director General, National Emergency Management Agency, and the Director General told him that armed robbers had just raided his house. Ibrahim Danjuma said that he called the Maitama Divisional Police Officer to go to the Director General's house and handle the case, but later on, he decided to go to the Director General's house himself. He said that when he got there, 2 witnesses told him that the armed robbers escaped with an ash-colored Peugeot 406 and a red Starlet car. Ibrahim Danjuma said that by 1:30 a.m., he was at Gimbia Street and he noticed a red Starlet car and a Peugeot 406 with 2 men in the Peugeot. He said he trailed the cars but later lost them, so he alerted the police pin-down team at Gimbia Street. Danjuma Ibrahim said that when the Peugeot 406 carrying the Apo 6 was approaching the police checkpoint, they flagged down the car and the car initially slows down, but as the car got closer, the car sped up. Ibrahim Danjuma said that he had to use his BMW to block their path. According to him, the Peugeot 406 collided with his car and in an effort to escape, he reversed and hit a tree. After hitting the tree, he said that he was trying to get out of his car and then he had gunshots. Danjuma said that he took cover and approached the car with his pistol and found out that one of the 6 people in the car was unconscious or presumably dead and the others were badly injured. He said he then took them to Gaki police station and handed them over to Uthman Abdusalam, the DPO who was on the run. He said that 5 of the Apo 6 were alive when he handed them over to the DPO Uthman Abdusalam and only 1 person was dead. Ibrahim Danjuma then went on to accuse a police officer who had earlier testified against him. Ibrahim Danjuma said that it was Inspector Suleiman Audu who shot at the Apo 6. Ibrahim Danjuma broke down in tears and said that he never shot any of the Apo 6 and never ordered any officer to shoot any of them. He pleaded for forgiveness from the Igbo community and Nigerians in general and said that it was an unfortunate incident and not a deliberate attempt at ethnic cleansing by one group against the other. Ibrahim Danjuma said that the cause of his present predicament is envy and that his position in the Nigerian Police Force had attracted envy in recent times. He said that is the reason why the Gaki Divisional Police Officer Abdusalam Uthman, who was detained alongside him, was allowed to escape from custody. Ibrahim Danjuma said that the escape of CSP Uthman Abdusalam had been planned by his detractors to put him in a difficult situation, since it was Uthman Abdusalam who should have been making explanations as to the whereabouts of the deceased traders and not him who had handed 5 of the 6 victims alive to Uthman Abdusalam at the Gaki police station. During cross-examination by counsel to the deceased victims, Amo Binzelu and Mrs. Mary Ogbegolu, Ibrahim Danjuma said that the manner the victims drove the 406 was suspicious and they could be regarded as armed robbers based on the previous background information. During the cross-examination, Ibrahim Danjuma denied knowing the only female victim and having quarreled with the victims before the incident. He also denied shooting an Okada rider during the fuel price labor strike in Abuja earlier on, and he also denied facilitating the escape of Uthman Abdusalam. That day, his counsel Barrister John Olusegun Odubela tendered Ibrahim Danjuma's professional qualification documents to prove that he was a trained police officer. These were some of his exact words on that day. He said a lot of things that day, but these were the ones I was able to retrieve. If you have the time, pause the video and read it. I want you to bear in mind that earlier on, before the panel was set up to investigate this case, Ibrahim Danjuma himself said that he collected the AK-47 of Inspector Suleiman Audu and shot at the Apo Six, claiming that they were armed robbers. He admitted this in his first police statement, but he later destroyed that statement and started claiming that he never shot anybody. Deputy Commissioner of Police, Force Crime Investigation Department Abuja, Amusa Bello, who was part of the initial police team that investigated the incident and who personally supervised Danjuma while in police custody, testified before the panel of inquiry. Amusa Bello narrated how Ibrahim Danjuma initially admitted to shooting the Apo Six, but later tore his written statement after some dignitaries came to visit him at the police headquarters. These were the exact statements of Amusa Bello on the day he testified. If you have the time, pause the video and read it. This one is important, but I'm trying to quickly wrap up this video, but if you have the time, do read it. During his testimony, DCP Amusa Bello also narrated how Uthman Abdulsalam escapes from police custody. These were his exact words that day while explaining how Uthman Abdulsalam escapes from police custody. You can pause the video to read it if you have the time. On the 27th of July 2005, the Divisional Crime Officer at the Garki Police Station, ASP Idrisu Umaru, testified before the Justice Olasumbo Commission. Now, Idrisu Umaru was the second in command at the Garki Police Station. The only person higher than him at that station then was the DPO Uthman Abdulsalam, who had escaped. So that night, Idrisu Umaru was at the police station and he saw what went down that night and how Augustina was strangled. During his testimony, Idrisu Umaru reviewed everything that went down that night at Garki Police Station. These were his exact words that day during his testimony. You can pause the video and read it if you have the time. IPO Dennis Asawa, the officer who caught the photographer that night and the same person who also took the bodies to Asokoro District Hospital, testified that day. IPO Dennis Asawa refuted Ibrahim Danjuma's testimony. As I said earlier, when Ibrahim Danjuma appeared before the Commission of Inquiry, he said that when he handed over the Apo Six to the DPO, 5 of them were alive and only 1 person was dead. But IPO Dennis Asawa said that only 2 of the 6 were brought alive and the 2 survivors were ordered to be executed. You remember, the Inspector General of Police, Sunday Gabriel Ehinderu, had earlier arraigned Danjuma Ibrahim and officers involved in the case. The police later informed an Abuja High Court that was handling the trial that they were not ready to continue with the trial because they wanted to put their house in order, and they requested a long adjournment. A good number of journalists at the time believed that the arraignment of the officers involved in the case by the police was a desperate attempt to halt the Goodluck-led Commission of Inquiry, and when that plot failed, they then claimed they were not ready to go to trial. Now you remember, Justice Olasumbo Goodluck had earlier ordered the bodies to be exhumed and an autopsy to be conducted. So Suleiman Haruna, a staff member of the Abuja Environmental Protection Board, who witnessed the burial of the victims, helped to locate the unmarked graves where the Apo Six were buried. The graves were located 10 meters away from the road and grass had already grown where they were buried. The bodies were exhumed on the 29th of July 2005 and they were already in an advanced stage of decomposition. With the help of the pictures taken by Chukwudi and matching the clothes on the decomposed bodies, the corpses of 5 of the 6 victims were identified. There were no pre-burial photo of Ekene as he was on the run when the photos were taken, but it was safe to conclude that he was the last unidentified body. A team of pathologists led by Professor Olusegun Sylvester Ojo carried out the autopsy, and the autopsy report was submitted to the Judicial Commission of Inquiry on Friday, 5th of August 2005. The autopsy stated that the first 4 bodies buried together were fairly decomposed, but the other 2 bodies, which were buried separately, were in an advanced decomposing stage due to the intensity of the sun and humidity, as they were buried without a coffin and were clad in street clothes. The autopsy report stated that the victims were buried with their t-shirts, jeans trousers, underwears and shoes, and that Augustina was buried with her brassiere, earrings, t-shirt and trouser jeans. The 2 bodies that were buried together, Chinedu Meniru and possibly Ekene Isaac Mgbe, due to the advanced decomposed state of the bodies, their cause of death couldn't be determined. But for the other 3 boys, Ifeanyi Ozor, Paulinus Ogbonna and Nwokike, The autopsy report stated that they sustained bullet injuries prior to their death. Professor Ojo said that they may have died as a result of cerebral laceration due to high-velocity missile, which could be from a gunshot. The autopsy report stated that they were shot at very close range, in contradiction to the police's initial claim of the victims being shot in a distant gun battle with the police. The autopsy report also corroborated the testimony of ASP Idrisu Umaru, who stated that Ibrahim Danjuma fiercely strangled Augustina when he heard that Ekene Isaac had escaped. The pathologist said that the cause of death of the police officer Anthony Ida could only be determined with the results of the toxicological analysis that was still being expected from Lagos. Days later, on the 22nd of August 2005, the autopsy report for the police officer Anthony Ida was submitted to the panel, and the results showed that the police officer Anthony Ida died from organophosphate poisoning. These were some of the exact texts of Professor Olusegun Sylvester Ojo in the autopsy report of Anthony Ida. After the autopsy was completed, and based on the opinion of medical experts on the issue of an early burial to avoid further decomposition, President Olusegun Obasanjo then finally ordered that the bodies of the Apo Six be handed over to the families. Families of the Apo Six victims were told to go collect the corpse of their loved ones at Gaki Hospital Mortuary, Abuja, and the family of the police officer Anthony Ida was told to go collect the corpse of Anthony at the National Hospital Mortuary, Abuja. The families of the Apo Six victims and the Apo Traders Association all unanimously came out to say that they would not be collecting the bodies of the Apo Six. In a statement that was submitted to the federal government by Barrister Amobi Nzelu and signed by Mr. Motimo Ihejirika, they said that the Apo Six would not be buried until the Judicial Commission of Inquiry had finished and submitted its report to the federal government, and the federal government makes their reaction to the report public. They said they would not be collecting the bodies until the victims had been officially cleared of the armed robbers tag that the police had falsely tagged them with in the beginning. They asked that the copies of the recommendations of the Judicial Commission of Inquiry be properly documented and that the federal government give the Apo Six a befitting burial. In the statement, they said that any contrary move against their demand will be highly resisted with the last drop of their blood. There were a lot of people who testified, but because of time, I can't go into all the testimonies at the Judicial Commission of Inquiry. Anyway, on the 25th of August 2005, the Justice Olasumbo panel of inquiry rounded up its public sitting and thanked everyone who assisted them in unraveling the mystery behind the gruesome murder of the Apo Six. 48 witnesses testified, and 50 written memoranda from the public were received by the Judicial Commission of Inquiry in regards to this case. The commission discovered that the locally made pistols allegedly found in the Peugeot 406 car had not been fired in 6 months prior to the ballistician examination, and that they were actually recovered by the police from a hotel called Ritalori Hotel in Abuja, and the weapons were recovered by the police 2 weeks before the entire Apo Six incident. The commission also discovered that Usman Abdulsalam, that's the officer on the run, ordered the police armorer Inspector Ishaya Yanwak to bring the weapons from the armory of the Gaki police station, and the inspector, that's Ishaya Yanwak, then brought the weapons and then handed the weapons over to Usman Abdulsalam, who then planted the weapons inside the Peugeot 406 car. The commission also established that no shooting came from the Peugeot 406 car and that the victims were not armed robbers since no guns were found on them. The autopsy conducted on the victims showed that they were killed by high-velocity missiles consistent with bullet shots, and it showed that they were shot at close range, contrary to the police account of the victims being murdered in a distant gun battle with the police. On the 25th of August 2005, the Justice Olasumbo Goodluck Commission of Inquiry established a prima facie case of premeditated murder against the Deputy Commissioner of Police in charge of the Abuja Police Command, DCP Ibrahim Danjuma. Even though the recommendation of the Judicial Commission of Inquiry wasn't officially disclosed to the general public, the general public eventually became aware of some of the recommendations through those who were directly involved in the case. The commission recommended that 8 officers involved, that's DCP Ibrahim Danjuma, DPO Usman Abdulsalam, who was on the run, Inspector Suleiman Audu, PC Dennis Asawa, ASP Nicola Zakaria, Ezike Echenege, Baba Emmanuel, and PC Sadiq Salami be arrested and that they face a criminal trial. The panel also recommended that the federal government pay 3 million naira in compensation to each of the deceased families. The commission also recommended that Gimbiya Street be renamed as Apo Six in honor of the youths who were murdered. The commission also recommended that the police force should take immediate steps to pay the family of Anthony Ida his insurance benefits and other payments due and payable to him. The commission also recommended the payment of 500,000 naira for the burial of the victims, and the panel submitted its final report to the federal government on the said date, that's 25th of August 2005. The final report of the Judicial Commission of Inquiry was submitted to the newly appointed Attorney General of the Federation and Minister of Justice at the time, Chief Bayo Ojo, who was sworn in during the case. The federal government accepted the recommendation and issued a white paper, and all the officers involved were suspended from the police force and were to face trial. Danjuma Ibrahim, Ezike Echenege, Imone Baba, Nicholas Zakaria, Sadiq Salami, and Uthman Abdulsalam, who was at large, were slammed with a 9-count charge of criminal conspiracy and culpable homicide, contrary to Section 97 and 221 of the Penal Code. In an earlier speech by the President Olusegun Obasanjo in August 2005, he said, "The full weight of the law will be brought to bear on all who are found to have been involved in the perpetration of this most heinous crime." By the way, on Monday, the 10th of October 2005, an Abuja Chief Magistrate's Court discharged CSP Lawa Ado, the officer who was arrested and accused of helping Uthman Abdulsalam escape from police custody. On the 1st of December 2005, the federal government presented a check of 3 million naira, about $22,000 at the time, each, to the families of the 6 youths, and the President Olusegun Obasanjo also apologized to the families of the victims. The federal government also repaired the Peugeot 406 that the victims were driving at the time of the incident and handed the car over to the lawmaker, Honorable Abubakar Abdullahi, in the presence of Elvis Ozor, the brother of one of the victims. The federal government also promised to send representatives during the burial of the 6 victims, and Sosoliso Airline was contacted to convey the remains of the youths to Enugu Airport, where their respective families would receive their corpses for proper burial. I mean, this was huge back in the day. As of 2005, the white paper report of that incident remains the only pro-panel report that had ever been implemented with compensation paid since the country's independence in 1960. Despite many cases of police brutality, this case was the first time in Nigeria's history where compensation was actually paid to the victims of police brutality. Credit to the former President Olusegun Obasanjo. As for the Judicial Commission's recommendation of renaming Gimbiya Street as Apo Six, the federal government argues that renaming Gimbiya Street as Apo Six would continuously remind the Igbos of the sad incident, and it would make the Igbos hold the federal government in contempt each time they hear the name of the place, so that recommendation wasn't honored. The Nigerian Police Force and the families of the Apo Six victims signed an undertaking that, after the compensation is paid, and even as the trial is being conducted, they would not bring up the Apo Six case again to the general public. The families agreed and signed the undertaking. Now, for the trial, the Office of the Minister of Justice and Attorney General of the Federation was the prosecutor in this case. They took over the case from the police. You remember, I said earlier that the police had quickly arraigned the officers involved, but later asked for more time in order to get their house together. So now, the police were no longer the prosecutors in the case. It was now the federal government through the Office of the Attorney General. And to ensure that justice was served and that the trial was as quick as possible, the federal government hired some of the best legal practitioners in the country to prosecute the officers. 2 senior advocates of Nigeria, Chief Chris Uche and Chief Maman Osuma Mike, were hired as counsel to the federal government. You understand, it was not the families of the victims that took these officers to court. No. The federal government was prosecuting these officers via the Office of the Minister of Justice. So now, the lawyers of the families of the victims, Barrister Amobi Nzelu and Dr. Mrs. Ifeanyi Ozor, their work was done at this point, and now, these lawyers have taken over the case on behalf of the federal government. The trial was held at the High Court of the Federal Capital Territory and was presided over by the then Chief Judge of FCT, Justice Ishaq Usman Bello. The trial started on the 18th of January 2006, and believe it or not, that trial lasted for 11 years and 2 months. I don't want to bore you with the court proceedings, but here are some things that happened in the lives of those involved in the case during the trial. On the 2nd of August 2006, just 6 months into the trial, Danjuma Ibrahim was granted bail on health grounds, which the court called exceptional and special medical bail, as Mr. Danjuma said that he was suffering from a heart problem and he fainted twice to convince the judge that his health was bad. He was granted bail and was a free man during the remaining 10 years plus of the trial. Ezike Acheneje, one of the officers on trial who killed Ekene on the street, was also granted bail because he was battling with AIDS, and the judge said he didn't want him infecting others. But the judge, Justice Ishaq Bello, denied Police Constable Sadiq Salami bail. Chinedu Meniru's father had a stroke out of shock and died because of the incident. Augustina's grandfather also had a stroke and died due to the news.
The only guy that is helping me in my family, and now I'm a widow, no help, nothing. I don't know what to do, I'm still crying. Even because through this death of my daughter, my father was late because when he heard when he see the death of Augustina, my father fell on that stroke and he died.
5 accused officers and 8 other police witnesses testified that Mr. Ibrahim Danjuma killed the victims and ordered that the survivors be executed. Now, even though the Commission of Inquiry recommended that 8 officers face trial, only 5 of those officers actually did face trial. Uthman Abdusalam, one of the officers recommended by the Commission of Inquiry to face trial, remained on the run and was never seen again. Anyway, the trial eventually came to an end after 11 years, and on the 9th of March 2017, Ezike Acheneje and Emmanuel Baba, based on their own confession, were convicted for the murder of Ekene and Augustina, the 2 among the 6 who survived the car shooting. They tried retracting their confession later on though, but the judge wasn't having any of that, as he concluded that it is an afterthought to distort the truth, and they were sentenced to death. Even though several officers confessed that Mr. Ibrahim Danjuma ordered the killings, and some even confessed that he did the killings himself, he was controversially acquitted and set free. According to Justice Ishaq Bello, there were contradictions in the witness testimonies, and the fact that his fingerprint was not taken after arrest made it impossible to establish his involvement in the crime. 2 other officers on trial, Nicholas Zakaria and Sadiq Salami, were also acquitted and set free. I mean, make it make sense. 2 officers confessed in court that they obeyed the order of a superior officer and killed 2 people. They confessed, maybe hoping that they would be pardoned or given lighter sentences, and hoping that the superior officer that ordered them would face the wrath of the law. But no. The 2 officers were sentenced to death based on their confession, but the superior officer Ibrahim Danjuma, whom they said ordered them to do the killings, walked free. That same confession that got them death sentences wasn't good enough to convict the person that ordered them. The judge's ruling didn't sit well with the families of the deceased and well-meaning Nigerians, and the family wanted the case to be appealed. And remember, I said that the federal government was the one prosecuting the officers via the Office of the Minister of Justice. So only the Minister of Justice and the Attorney General of the Federation had the authority to appeal the ruling of the case or to issue an extended fiat to another lawyer to go ahead with the appeal. Now, this trial lasted for 11 years and there was a complete change of power when the trial had ended, and the pressure that forced the government to act had cooled off. Nigeria had 4 presidents during the trial duration: President Olusegun Obasanjo, President Umaru Musa Yar'Adua, President Goodluck Ebele Jonathan, and President Muhammadu Buhari, who was now the president when the case ended. Nigeria also had 6 different ministers of justice during the duration of the incident. And by the time the trial was done, Abubakar Malami was the Minister of Justice and Attorney General of the Federation. So, the president who apologized to the families of the victims was no longer in power. The president who paid compensation to each of the families of the victims was no longer in power. The president who disbanded the police panel because he no longer found the panel competent enough was no longer in power. The president that set up a judicial panel to investigate the case publicly was no longer in power. The Minister of Justice that said that the police panel violated the tenets of transparency and rule of law was no longer in power. The Minister of Justice that initially prosecuted these officers was no longer in power, so there was a total change of power by the time the trial was done. As the families of the victims were making efforts to get the case appealed, in November 2017, Mr. Ibrahim Danjuma was reinstated into the Nigerian Police Force. His rank as the Deputy Commissioner of Police Abuja was restored, and his unpaid salary for the 11-year duration of the trial and suspension was fully paid back to him. As if that was not painful enough for the families of the deceased, in December 2017, Danjuma Ibrahim was promoted from the rank of Deputy Commissioner of Police Abuja to the rank of Commissioner of Police. And that wasn't all. In March 2018, Ibrahim Danjuma was promoted again from the rank of Commissioner of Police Abuja to Assistant Inspector General of Police. All efforts by the families of the deceased to appeal the case within the 3-month time limit for appeal were frustrated by the then Minister of Justice and Attorney General of the Federation, Abubakar Malami, and to this day, nobody has been convicted for the death of the 4 traders that died in the Peugeot 406 at that checkpoint. I mean, just look at this sad case. And when citizens begin to talk, they will say, "Oh, we don't love our country. We are demarketing Nigeria." Meanwhile, the country has been demarketing itself from time immemorial. Huge credit to the traders in Apo, and also credit to Barrister Amo Binzelu. I mean, the man is really a superhero with no cape. If not for his doggedness, the police would have successfully labeled the Apo Six as armed robbers and closed the case at the very beginning. Barrister Amo Binzelu literally put his life on the line. What he did back then was such a risky thing to do. I mean, the police actually killed one of their own, Anthony Ida, in an attempt to cover up this case. So taking Barrister Amo Binzelu out would have been like a walk in the park for them. But thankfully, nothing happens to him, and he is still alive to this day, aged 72 at the time of making this video. Thank you very much, sir. These are pictures of Ibrahim Danjuma in service after the Apo Six Killings. That's after he was promoted. Ibrahim Danjuma getting paid by the government with taxpayers' money after such a heinous crime. I have a playlist on my channel for other crazy cases of the police violating the human rights of the people that they are paid to protect. You can check out the playlist by clicking this pop-up here. You know what's crazy? There's actually another case, Apo 8, that happened after the Apo 6. It happened in 2013. In September 2013, the army and DSS raided a building in Apo, Abuja, and killed 8 innocent people and injured many others. If you've never set foot out of Nigeria, you would never truly understand how terrible Nigeria is. As I speak to you, Ibrahim Danjuma is a free man. He's retired now though. He retired at the age of 60, the police retirement age. Yo, I wish this was Nollywood where the bad guys suffer in the end, but this is Nigeria.